Let's talk questions again. This time, I really want to focus on creative, high-quality questions. So we're going to be covering 5 or 6 different techniques about how to design high-quality questions designed to open the mind and engage imagination, but this time we're going to use some creative techniques. So this is about possibility thinking. And you can use these in a couple of different ways. If you know that the person that you're coaching is responsive to imagination and a bit of creativity, you can perhaps put them in a little bit earlier. Or you can use these questions when the person is perhaps drying up a little bit. You've done the standard 10 possibility thinking and you think, I just want to open their mind up in a little bit more of a creative way. So here we go. Technique number 1. This is about the use of a third person perspective. So if I was coaching you, you would be person number 1. I would be person number 2. Anybody else in the whole wide world would potentially be person number 3. And what we're going to do is we're going to design questions that look at things from other people's perspectives. So one of my favourite questions that I ask a lot in coaching, because it's applicable to absolutely anything, is this. Imagine that the world's greatest expert was available for just a couple of minutes to share a few words of wisdom or advice with you. What might they possibly advise? So notice it's a possibility-based question. What might they possibly advise? But also notice that the setup for this question starts with the word imagine. So I set up the scenario, imagine, and in this case the world's greatest expert, right? You don't have to know that world's greatest expert, you just have to imagine that there is one on your subject, whatever it is. And then if they were there for just a couple of minutes, what might they possibly say? So that's one that works, but you could use a friend's perspective. Imagine your friend was giving you some advice, wisdom. A parent's perspective. You could do a child's perspective. You could do a colleague's perspective. You could do, if the person works, their boss's perspective. You could use somebody famous, but a little tip here, be very careful if you're using famous people. You need to make sure that this person likes or respects them. So don't just throw in a person's name because they might go, oh, I don't like that person. Right? So find out, and you might even ask, who's a person that you admire in the business world or in the sporting world or whatever it is? They say the name of the person and then you say, well, let's imagine that that person was giving you some advice. What might they possibly say? Okay? So getting people to think of it from different people's perspectives, really, really creative, and it's very simple to do. Let's look at a second technique. Second technique is about the use of time, distance, or space. Now, let me give you some examples of questions here. And again, the questions will start with the word imagine. So imagine you could go back in time, or imagine you could go forward in the future, or imagine time could stand still. So that's what you want people to imagine. That's the setup. Then comes the question, and the question always starts with a what, a how, or a who possibly. So imagine you could go back in time. Who from all of history could maybe give you a few words of wisdom or has left a legacy of something practical that could help you to move forward? That would be a phrase here. Or imagine you could move forward in time and see yourself overcoming all of those possible obstacles. What might you possibly be doing? So they actually imagine themselves doing. Okay? Or what if time stood still and you were the only person? What sort of things might you want to clear up or do differently or search for or take the time to do? Okay? So that's about time, moving time. Distance is where you get a person to look down from a great height on something. So it could be, imagine a helicopter view or a bird's eye view. Imagine being a fly on the wall looking at things. So it's all the imagine there. What might they possibly see? And the interesting thing about questions that involve distance is that it very often separates people from the emotion. So if I was coaching somebody and maybe they were a bit emotional, I might use this a question and say something like, well, imagine you were looking down and perhaps seeing yourself there and the relationship between you and this other person. What might you actually notice that could help you to move forward? So they're taking a step back. And there's lots of phrases that we use day to day, like a helicopter or a bird's eye view, or taking a step back, or seeing the wood for the trees. You know, it's about taking a step back, putting a bit of distance between you and the thing to see things more clearly. Okay, so time, distance and space. That's a second creative technique we could use there. A third one would be the use of magical imagery. So you could, for example, say, you know, imagine I've got a magic wand, or you've got a magic wand, and you were to wave it and have 3 wishes. What might you possibly wish for? Or what possible resources, or who might that possibly be? So you can link in those 10 possibility areas, the standard 10 go mad possibility thinking areas, with these creative techniques. Let's think of other magical imagery. What if you could make something possibly disappear or appear? We could imagine a magic computer screen or a TV screen. Who might you possibly want? This is about getting people to just let go of the current reality, do a bit of imagining for themselves. Imagine you had 3 wishes. What might that possibly be? Just get them to explore from a different angle. Word of warning on these techniques. If you're doing possibility thinking, don't throw them in as the very first question, right? Because you want to build up the rapport and the trust with people. And if you throw in, imagine you're a fairy with a magic wand, perhaps might not be the most rapport building opening question in the possibility thinking. So just judge that carefully. Here's another technique. This one is called a what if scenario. A what if scenario is where you ask a person for a small period of time, maybe 30 seconds or a minute or two, just to suspend their current thoughts or their current beliefs. Okay, and when you do this, you need to ask their permission to do it. So I would set it up like this. I would ask your permission and go, I've got an idea that might help you. Would you like to hear it? They go, yeah, sure, okay. Well, let's just pretend that we haven't got those current barriers at the moment, or let's just pretend that your boss would say anything you want to. So what if, just for the next minute, there is a way? What might it possibly be? So by getting them to acknowledge parking it and getting them to gain the buy-in to working with you for just 30 seconds or a minute, sometimes ideas just pop into people's heads. The way to use this perhaps in a coaching session, and I use this a lot in group sessions, so I might be working with a team of people and I say, could we just do a what if scenario for the next 5 minutes maybe in a group? Here's the rules. Suspend the current beliefs. Let's create a scenario that anything is possible within 5 minutes and just play with it. And you create that playful scenario, right? If you were doing it one-to-one in a coaching session, you would ask the person's permission. I've got an idea that might help. Would you like to hear it? Yes, sure. Okay. What if there was a way? And sometimes you might just have to lower your voice a bit, as if you've been a little bit creative. What if there was a way? What might it possibly be? Or what if you possibly could persuade that person to do something? How might you possibly do it? Just what if? And again, might need to reassure, remember, just possibilities. That little reassurance to get them into their comfort place and go, well, I could do that then, I could do that. Your job as the coach is to get them into that possibility mindset, and these are just some more creative, advanced techniques to do that. Final one that I want to leave you with is one of what's called reverse logic, or sometimes flip side. And this is how it works. A person, you're coaching them, they might come to what they believe is a blank, or they can't think of anything else. And in fact, they might even say it out loud. Oh, I can't think of anything. No, that's it. I've thought of everybody. Rather than accept that at face value, what we could say as coaches is, well, let's just make a list of all the things that wouldn't work then. Okay? And they go, oh, okay, just go with me. Again, you might have to get their buy-in and permission. So let's make a list of all the people that definitely couldn't help you. And they start writing down that list. Now, what happens to a lot of people is they get down after thinking, oh, well, actually, that person could help me. And that causes the breakthrough. You're doing it to break a limiting belief or an assumption that they've made. Perhaps they want to give in a little bit too easy in possibilities. It's just a way of stretching them. So you flip it this side and that side. If you're using this technique in groups, and I've used it very, very successfully to create all sorts of products, customer service, ways of working, this is how you could use it. You say to the people, rather than a good question might be, let's suppose we're working with a way of recruiting people for a charity or a community group project. A good question would be, how could you possibly recruit people, or how could you possibly make this opportunity attractive to people? So it's a good possibility-based question. A more fun way to do it is to get their buy-in to do a flip side exercise where you say, okay, what would be the world's worst way to recruit people? Or how could we make this so unappealing that nobody would ever want to get involved? And you make a list of all these things that you absolutely wouldn't do. And then you take each one and you flip it the other side back. So if, for example, a person would say, we would make the advert really boring, or we wouldn't say anything. The flip side of that would be, we would make the advert so interesting and irresistible that people would flock. And then a supplementary question spins out of that. What could we possibly do to make it irresistible? How could we possibly make it irresistible? And that's how you break through the thinking of, well, we've thought of everything, or there's only one way to do it. You take it the other way and then you flip it back to an extreme. So these are just some questions that you could put in to some coaching sessions, right, beyond the basic 10 possibility thinking areas. Sometimes I don't use them at all. Sometimes I just put in 2 or 3 just to see if it works with the person. Have a go the next time you're coaching somebody.